Hi, my name is Bobby, and I'm going to take the next few minutes to kind of inform you on the research that I recently conducted in the topic that I found of specific interest, and that was the effects of childhood on an individual's future and what their family structure or their young adulthood, what that might, the dynamics of that, and how that might impact an individual's future. So that was kind of the background information that I wanted to look into, and more specifically, that kind of entails, like I said, family structure, family dynamics, what, when it comes to a mother and father, who holds what role, who does what, and what kind of family or parenting that takes place in a home, and how that might influence kids, how that might influence children, what they might take from that, what might be beneficial, what might be positive, what might be negative in regards to that. And in other specific scenarios, as far as family dynamics go, what it might look like for a fatherless home, or the amount of time that fathers or even mothers might spend with their children, and how all these factors can influence how a child might develop in their future well-being, and what that might look like as far as future confidence or their own abilities. So the question that I kind of am posing and will answer throughout my research, and hopefully inform you well of by the end of this presentation, is that question is, does the amount of time that parents attend to their children have a direct impact on their future well-being? And then more specifically, does the amount of time or the presence or absence of a father influence or have a impact on how a child might succeed or fail in their future? Does the presence of a father prepare them or equip them for the life ahead of them? So that's kind of the question I'm posing, and the amount of impact that someone's childhood really has on their extended future. So one of the first points that I really wanted to discuss, and something that I found really interesting in my research, was the amount of time that parents spend with their children. And a lot of times we see children maybe neglected or not receive the attention that they deserve, especially in their younger years. In their youth, they may go neglected more times than none. And this graph here is a great representation of the amount of time that mothers compared to fathers, the amount of time that they spend with their children. And unfortunately, what we see is that fathers are spending less time with their children than mothers are, and that has a deeper impact than we might believe. In the General Social Survey website, I found some really interesting data, some interesting surveys that were held, and that really produced some impressive information. And in a question that was asked random respondents, do you think you spend about the right amount of time with your child? So different parents were asked this question. Do you think you spend, quote unquote, about the right amount of time with your child? And 50.9% said that they did think they spent the right amount of time with their child. And then in a second survey, same question was asked with a different set of parents. 55.4% said that they did. And then again, 53.7% in a separate survey. So that was specifically asking parents, do you think you spend enough time with your child? And their response was about 50%. Yeah, I think I do. Spend about the right amount of time. And in another survey, what we saw was the same parents, the same respondents asked a different question from a different perspective. The question was, do you think your child thinks that you spend about the right amount of time with them. So kind of changes the perspective a little bit. But what we saw was in the 3 different surveys, the percentages came out to 48%, 45%, and another 48.3%. So this time what we saw was a lower percentage, and what's significant is that this perspective matters more because it's what the parent thinks the child believes, not so much what the parent believes they think they're spending the right amount of time with them or not. If I'm communicating that clearly, basically what I'm pointing out in this data is that parents, even from their own perspective, don't believe that their own children are getting the right amount of time. They're almost calling out a insufficiency in their own commitment or attention to their children because the percentages are smaller when it comes to what the child's perspective may be. So I felt that data was really interesting. And another survey that I really thought was important, the question was asked, do you believe that American children today are much better off, about the same, worse off, or much worse off than children 10 years ago regarding the time that they get with their parents? And in that survey, 53.4% responded that children were worse off than children 10 years ago, and 5.2% responded that they were much worse off. Only 8.5% responded that children today are better off than children 10 years ago. So that, I think, is a huge piece of data to really drive my point home, in that children aren't receiving the attention, the time that they need from their parents, and that the average individual, their perception is that children are not receiving the attention that they did 10 years ago. In another survey, the same question was asked if children today were about the same, worse off, better off, much worse off, so on, in regards to the amount of love, care, and attention that they receive. The results in that question were that 32% of respondents responded that children today were worse off when it comes to the amount of love, care, and attention that they receive from their parents. So obviously a huge percentage of our population thinks that children aren't receiving this love, care, and attention. And then another question asks, do you think that they're receiving the appropriate supervision or discipline? 49.9% responded that children were worse off today. And only 6.8% said that they were better off. So a huge difference between what we think is better off or worse off in regards to the amount of attention, time that children are receiving from their parents. I believe it's a huge contributor to the question that I'm asking in all my research. This graph is kind of another point that I wanted to communicate, in the fact that there are so many fatherless homes in the country that we live in. Just in the U.S. Is a great example. We see, as in this graph here, kind of not necessarily the direct topic I'm talking about, but is a great example of what fatherlessness and the effect that fatherlessness has on children. Some interesting facts that I found is 43% of U.S. children live without their father, and 71% of high school dropouts come from homes where there is no father. And fatherless boys and girls are 2 times more likely to end up in jail, and 4 times more likely to need emotional or behavioral, or to have emotional and behavioral problems in their future, in their young adulthood, and so on. So we see that the percentage of issues that we see in children without fathers is large. And in this graph we see the families that are in poverty versus single parent homes that are in poverty. In the blue we see either single mother families that are raising children. The percentages and the chances of them being in poverty is much higher than, for example, in the orange, where you see married couple, mother and father families with children, their chances of being in poverty or being poor are much, much lower than that of a family without a father figure. So, not only are children having more behavioral and emotional problems when they have when the father is absent, but they're also, other problems. Their poverty. An example I think we may not always acknowledge. So this graph really paints a great picture of what the impact of fatherless homes has on children and their future. This obviously prepares them in a terrible way because it often puts them in poverty. These two charts are another great example of the amount of single mother homes, out of wedlock births, the divorce rate today compared to 40 years ago. And although the divorce rate has gone down in the past couple of decades, it's still extremely high considering the amount of children that populate this country. So many of these children are growing up without a father, and out of wedlock births. It's just it paints the picture very easily for us. So, in conclusion, what I really wanted to communicate is that the parenting type, the amount of time spent with children, and the presence or absence of a father, that it really does influence the future well-being of a child and their ability to develop in every aspect of their life, and to be able to effectively kind of go into this life that's ahead of them. And it negatively affects the children of this generation, and we're seeing the effects of that today. Children are ending up in poverty, emotional disorders, depression, things of that sort, and lots of problems that are avoidable. And the family dynamic, the family structure is a great place to start, and it's a great place to really make improvements and change the outcome of tomorrow's adults, tomorrow's professionals. So I hope that this time has informed you of the dilemma, and that I clearly communicated that the structure of one's home has a direct influence on their future and their success in their own abilities as they grow up. So again, my name is Bobby, and I hope that this presentation has been beneficial to you. Thanks.